This is actually the first time we are continuing a theme. The last show, it hasn't dropped yet, but the one that's just preceding this one was a couple of my friends that we hung out in Spain together, and we attended the ICBC in Cannabis, and it was a tremendous time. And I talked a lot about how, similarly, how when I went to Vegas to attend MJ Biz, I ended up leaving having said, and all due respect to MJ Biz, but MJ Unpacked was really the show that I thoroughly enjoyed, and it brought a lot more value to my life. That's why we hosted George J. John. And going to Spain, I thought I was really going to Spain to attend Cannabis. And in truth, I was going to Spain. I ended up going to Spain and attended the ICBC. And so the International Business, the International Cannabis Business Conference, correct, Alex?
Correct, yeah.
Right? Okay. All right. So we had the best time at ICBC. And so subsequently, I had to reach out to Alex, who is the owner, the CEO, I'm sure, the brains behind the ICBC, and really try to find out, what the catalyst to wanting to create something in Europe, more to B2B, which I'll tell you was something that for me was a welcome addition to my time in Spain, but also really Europe as a whole and what that looks like, because I had a couple takeaways, and I won't, I don't want to lead the witness. I really want to talk about Alex and his, his coming to Cannabis. So Alex Rogers, as I said, is the owner and CEO of the ICBC, but ladies, gentlemen, all friends of mine who are out there, High Times called him, and I quote, G.I. Joe handsome. And I'm telling you, as I stand here before you, sit here as a matter of fact, I am telling you, we are on camera together. And if you are only listening to this and have not had the pleasure of seeing this footage, he is one handsome fella. So he's a family man. He's a vocalist, which I didn't know. We're going to talk about that. I see some keyboards behind him. So maybe we'll actually jam out before I let him leave. He's a lover of all things travel and languages. And I heard him mention his wife. So he's a loving, certainly husband. And I want to find out about his kids, if he has kids. But Alex Rogers, dude, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing that.
Oh man, Jordan, thanks a lot. I've never had such a exalted and yet embarrassing introduction in my life.
We pride ourselves on In the Weeds. We pride ourselves on those amazing introductions. And just so you know, it goes downhill from here, my brother.
Oh, well, anything less would be uncivilized, I reckon.
It goes downhill from here. So all bullshit aside, congratulations, because I'll tell you, going into it, I was unsure. ICBC was fantastic in Barcelona.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. We've been working our butts off for years to make these conferences. I used to produce hip hop shows back in the day, in the 90s, and I have an event background. And then I just started doing this I started a medical marijuana clinic in Oregon about 13 years ago. And then when they legalized in Oregon, I started getting all these questions. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a conference. And I used some of those skills that I did just being a hip hop producer, and did a weed conference. And I made like 30 grand off my first conference. And I was like, well, this is a lot better than the music industry. And so then I just got kind of hooked. And we started doing the conferences basically all throughout Oregon first, and we blew up in Oregon, the B2B style. And then I said, well, I want to do the International Cannabis Business Conference. I had lived in Europe for 8 years. My wife is from Slovenia. I spend every summer in Europe, actually moving there in a couple months too. And so my dream was always to basically go into Europe and be the first to do, and biggest, hopefully, which we became obviously, but I really had this European vision the whole time that we would get back, that I would get back to Europe and I would do something special there. I used to run the High Times Cannabis Cup back in the day, 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. I ran the concert house, the Melkweg. And so that was the biggest cannabis event at the time. So I had this kind of this pedigree, this vision, this life that was kind of, if I worked hard, got lucky, and did some of the right things, I actually knew that I could maybe achieve this, at the time, fairly grandiose vision.
And so has the vision evolved a lot since its inception? I mean, I was reading, is it 2017 that was the first show?
Yeah, 27. Yeah, no. So the first ICBC was 2014 in Portland,
Okay.
right? And then we went San Francisco, and I think 2016 we went to Vancouver. That was only kind of international. Sorry, Mike. And it wasn't until we got to Europe that I was like, we did Berlin in 2017, that I was like, okay, we are actually international, truly international now. And what I did was I booked the venue in 2016 when not shit was going on in Germany. There was 1,000 medical marijuana patients, and the Germans would be like, Alex, we are very worried for you. $500 a ticket. I do not know. We are, how you say, very frugal people. You know what I mean? And they were literally like saying that to me by some of my German partners. And I was like, well, fuck it. We're going to do it anyway, because I figured it's all inevitable, right? If it's not me, it's going to be somebody else. And
Yep.
so and if I got to lose a little money the first, whatever, this or that, then whatever, I'm okay with that. I'll build the brand. And so we did it, and I booked it in 2016, and all of a sudden medical blew up in between the time I booked the event and the 2017 show, which was in, I think, April. And medical just went robust right in between that time. Gave doctors all this leeway to put the pharmacies, the insurance reimbursement, all this. You can do licensed production now. And so 2017 Berlin basically blew up. So I got kind of lucky that on the timing, and so I actually think things happened actually quicker than I thought. And then we had the lockdowns, and then there was the lockdown period where nothing happened, and that actually set us back a little bit, but not as much as maybe others. And now as we're back, because we kept our brand going, because of pent up demand, we're going through exponential growth right now.
Did you go virtual at all? Did you?
I had one virtual event. It sucked. I'll never do it again. It was dope. I had Rick Steve's keynote. I had Tommy Chong doing, and DJ Muggs and Ed Rosenthal on my smoke breaks. I mean, conceptually it was okay, but it was just so drab. It was like kissing your sister, man. It was just the worst thing ever. And I just felt dirty doing it. And I'm a real people hands-on guy, right? And so this virtual thing, as a conference, it really just hurt my soul. And so it was okay to do for our brand, and it went okay, whatever. But for me, it was a painful experience, and one that I vowed. I never say never do anything again, but I'm pretty fucking sure I will never do any online event ever again.
I don't think virtual will ever leave my offering, because it's a way to connect.
I think it's great. No, I think it's great.
Either.
No, it's great. And now all my meetings were Zoom, and I have this more personal connection, where I thought that would have been that where I'm kind of an old dinosaur before, and I just got on the phone or whatever. I mean, and then the podcast now that here you are. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But for me, I mean, it's a tremendous boon for everybody. But for me personally, being this guy who's always gathered people together, doing it virtually it's
not the same.
It's like a stake through my heart. That's how bad it is for me.
And I'll tell you something, Alex, just so you know, what drove that home for me was because as much as I believe that as part of virtual experiences are here to stay, but there is no replacement for getting on a fucking plane, heading to Spain, going to Barcelona, meeting people from all over the world, going to have drinks, going to smoke some joints, going to bond. And I'll tell you something, those are friends for fucking life. They're friends for life. No, and there's no substitute for that.
No, you said it. There's zero substitute for that. And I create and curate these wonderful environments that are really, I'm not a snob. I'm a man of the people, if you will. And I hate snobbery and elitism. And so I really like my events to be this, like, well, if you come to the ICBC, you're ICBC family. And, my one rule I say when I get up on stage to start the event is don't be a dick. That's our only rule.
Yeah. And it's funny as you're saying that. Do you know what emphasized that for me was Jamie Pearson, who, Jamie and I, like, we met in Vegas, and a tremendous mutual respect from afar, but finally we got to spend a lot of time together, and both of my brothers came out to Barcelona to hang with me, and then I was shooting some cannabis content in Madrid for
These are
Instituto
priceless
Amsterdam.
experiences, man.
Dude, it's the best. Jamie and I got to hang out. I got to meet, Sean Kreidel, who, from Pineapple Express. It's just, those are the type of people you're drawing. And I'll tell you, the other one at the top of the list was Jim Belushi. So right at the top for me was meeting him, and, and just realizing exactly what Zoe Wilder said he was, an approachable dude. He's just an approachable guy. And you know what, dude? You did that for me. And that's why I wanted to bring you on the show. And I didn't tell you that in advance, but I always talk about people who positively impact me, because my goal is always to positively impact at least one person a day. And you impacted my life positively, and you didn't know that. So I wanted to tell you that.
Well,
so thank you.
I appreciate that. It's feedback like that just keeps me going, and knowing what I'm doing is right, and knowing creating this culture around the event also it's just a nice vibe where people can breathe, relax. It's not like and it's not like MJ Biz, and enough respect to MJ Biz, but you really, if you go in, even a guy like me who's an old industry head, right? If I go to MJ Biz, I'm gonna feel like I'm the new kid on the block, or I don't have any friends around, or whatever, and it's all this kind of overwhelming experience. Whereas these more intimate, curated events are, you feel more of a connection. And so I get a lot of feedback like that, and it really puts wind in my sail and keeps me going, working 15 hours a day every day. So
I get it. So, I want to go back to it, but I have to drill into your past. So there was something that I read about your story, quote unquote, bringing people to tears. But I think you and I are going to connect over our stories and what brought us to cannabis. But we all inevitably have a story and what brought us here. Can you just sort of, where'd you grow up, and what brought you to cannabis?
Yeah, I'm basically I'm a total city kid from Minneapolis. Went to public schools my whole life. Graduated from South High. Had a pretty multicultural upbringing with my friends and my family, and just loved cannabis. I actually had a disease, ulcerative colitis, when I was young, and kind of started smoking cannabis to help that. I eventually found new ways through food and yoga and meditation and low stress lifestyle and ganja, and living my life and being free and happy to cure myself. Bruce Lee says there's no cure. I live right alongside my disease. It's not encompassing me, but I never push it too far away, because I'm always aware of that. And that's a metaphor for, it's a great, from the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, a great metaphor of life. So I got way into weed, and, I was a really smart student, gifted. And then, I didn't get bad till I got to like high school. Right. And then I just started questioning and like doing crazy shit. And then eventually I moved up to California. My girlfriend at the time was a junior transfer to UCSC, Santa Cruz, a banana slug. And so I went out to Santa Cruz in 92. And then I met Jack Hare in 93. And then when I met Jack, that's when I started working for him on his California Hemp Initiative. And I was doing these other events. We did a human peace chain in Lighthouse Point in 94. Be Real from Cypress Hill came up. The Northridge earthquake was like 10 hours after that. It was just some deep, heavy shit. We were pushing hard back then, right? So I always believed, I just was always a fan of cannabis. And, and then I started singing, I started getting into hip hop. I was one of the few white rappers that back in the day, and you know, well before Eminem or anything like that. And I was one of the few white rappers that could chant dance hall, right? So I got into Rastafarianism and Rasta culture and Nyabingi and drumming and chanting, and it was all kind of cannabis related, right? It was just this whole cannabis world I was in, and I just loved it. And you know, Rasta say it's the healing of the nation, and so I always figured, you know, the world's going so one way and hemp is this way, that it's got to be the right thing. And that's kind of that's kind of basically how I got started, with just hemp activism and hip hop. And they were two really big, they were really synonymous. That's right when Cypress Hill came out. And then you started, it was like edgy to talk about pot back then. And nobody, but yet nobody was doing it, because it was still like a little bit, you know, you heard, you know, Nice and Smooth had that, I left my Philly at home and now I need another. I want to get blunted, my brother. And then Total Devastation took that I want to get blunted, my brother, off, and then put it to the Tribe Called Quest sample. And so you're starting to see it, right? All these bands that are almost like using it as a gimmick, or it's a real thing in their life, or whatever, however it was construed. I was right at that time of when the activism all happened, and 90s hip hop happened, right? So this is before all the bullshit rap took over, and we actually had all this varying different raps. Like I worked a lot with hieroglyphics and Del the Funky Homo Sapien and Soul to Mischief, and worked with the Alcoholics, all types of really like amazing crews out there. So that's how my love for cannabis is. It's not only just cannabis, but it's embedded in all these other subcultures of America also.
You know, oftentimes I used to think, and I talk about this often, right? Like, you know, there's not a room I have where there's not a guitar laying around. But I often used to think I loved cannabis because I used to love the. So, you know, because I love Scarlet Begonias and the Grateful Dead, that, you know, that was sort of my explanation for my love of cannabis. But
Yeah.
like you, I was diagnosed at 12 years old with psoriasis. And so I spent, and the audience has heard this ad nauseum, but, you know, as soon as someone mentioned this, and I didn't realize you and I were going to connect over, you know, our diseases and coming to cannabis, but clearly there's this link. You know, I've smoked joints every day of my life since I was before preteen. And the reason is because I was diagnosed with psoriasis, and I would wake up every morning with blood in my sheets and covered in like flakes. And it was just gross. And I wrote every high school exam in the hospital and spent a year and a half of my life sleeping in a tent at the Dead Sea in Israel. Like, dude, I did every fucking thing I could. But until 7 years ago, until I removed gluten, dairy, and refined sugar from my diet and began consuming cannabis with the intention of healing myself, lowering my inflammation. 60 days later, my brother, 60 days later, 30 pounds melted off my body and my psoriasis got better. So for the last 7 years, what I do is I build the narrative worldwide for what cannabis can be in food and beverage. Not what everyone fucking knows or thinks about food and beverage, which is the gummies, the cookies, the brownies. That's not healing us.
No,
and
that's
the plants. So
no, that's such a good point. And that's the Rastafarian in me. We talk Ital living, right? So here you have a fucking brownie or a gummy, and I'm like, well, what's in that fucking gummy? Because if it's not honey sweetened, right? And if it's not GMOs, right? Like the money I spend on food a year is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm always conscious that poor folk don't have these options, and they're in this food desert being poisoned and killed. So when LeBron James says Black Lives Matter and then comes on and does a fucking McDonald's commercial, the next thing, it irks me. And all me Rasta brethren, we are just say fire I go burn, because the cannabis is representative of something so much greater, and that health is holistic, and you have to have it on all levels. Refined sugar could be the worst thing that anyone could fucking eat in this world. It's killing people. And so we send people to McDonald's. So we talk about health, but we don't talk, but then we don't ever, we see a fast food commercial on TV and it just goes right over our head. Right. And it's
I
all the
call it
black
the
people like, oh, I want a Big Mac. Yeah, girl, get yourself a Big Mac. It's the most racist fucking bullshit. This is shit I've been touting for years. I've been going into the hood saying, don't smoke tops. Here's Modiano papers, right? Don't smoke the thick tops or zigzags. Smoke the Modiano. That was the best paper back in the day. Now I smoke Ziggy's from Slovenia. But don't drink the malt liquor. Here's a microbrew. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, this is processed. You know what I'm saying? Stay away from some of this soul food. It's killing you, right? So this is totally for poor people in general, but for the black community is being and the poor community and the general American community is being targeted for destruction through the food industrial complex. And this is nothing like really, this is not any revelatory thing I'm saying here, but I think people get confused when they talk about healing, that just like you say, no dairy, no refined sugar, take gluten out. And gluten and dairy are okay for some people, but for a lot, they're really not. And when you take those things out of your diet, food is the most important. Food and sleep are the two most important things to heal somebody. And so I don't know. I'm you got me excited because this is I'm not just here to put a cannabis conference. I believe in legalization of all drugs, right? I believe in a decentralized society built from community up, right? And if you're getting all your food from everywhere else, and you're getting all your everything from everywhere else, look what's happening now with the supply chain. Oh, how did commoditization of everything work out for us, right? So we have to go back to our communities. We have to eat food that's grown in our communities. And people just are so disconnected from their bodies and their souls. They don't understand. And so it's up to us, for us to bridge that gap. People who have healed themselves from diseases, we can't. I remember there was a time where I was very disconnected from my body also. So we have to have patience for and understanding to just help educate.
I'm just sitting here making notes and like nodding my head just constantly. So a couple things, all about balance, love balance. I encourage balance. In my life, balance doesn't exist where I eat healthy and then choose to go eat a Big Mac. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. That's not balance, dude. Balance would be like, okay, I had an organic piece of bread, but I still shouldn't have had the bread, but it was still healthy.
And so I probably wouldn't even have the bread because the gluten will destroy me. And I'd love to have a beer, but my cheat might be, you know what? I had Haagen-Dazs. Like I had a spoonful of Haagen-Dazs. Do you know what I mean? Like God strike me down for the first time in 5 months. I've had a spoonful of Haagen-Dazs. Like if that's my balance that I strike, so be it. And I encourage people to strike balance, but it's not through McDonald's, because that is part of A, it's not food. B, it's part of this, what I call this big gulp culture. And it's just, everything is an excess. You think about even these quote unquote healthier alternatives, where I talk about like Cheesecake Factory, for example, where you go to Boca Raton and we drive up to, Power Line and we get to Boca, or the 95, we get to Boca, we go in, we know that we are standing in line for an hour to get into Cheesecake Factory, where they're serving you a portion that every single person, if you're not leaving there with a huge to-go container for lunch the next day, you've overeaten. Because the portion sizes are like for 3, 4, 5 people. But that's what we teach.
I mean, I'm so hardcore that I'm like on my organic food box, if it says natural flavor, I'm like,
I won't even buy prepared foods, brother. Like I'll tell you. So there's one product, and I'm working on something right now with them, and I get 0 for saying the name Zen Sweet, but there's a company called Zen Sweet. They're from Humboldt. They created this monk fruit sweetened
Yeah.
shelf stable cake mixes, you know, snickerdoodles, cookie mixes. They're
Monk
fucking
fruit's the shit. Monk
um,
fruit and coconut fruit, right? Yeah.
dude. I mean, maple syrup is my go-to. That is my sweetener. I'm a Canadian boy. Maple syrup, when you reduce it down, I can do anything that I can do with sugar. So that,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, right.
it's an unrefined sweetener. So for me, it's amazing. But you know, it really always drives me crazy. And I was one of them, but you mentioned it. And maybe I don't have your phrasing properly, but I'll paraphrase. But like, you weren't in tune with your body. I was in tune with my body. And I think many people are in tune with the body, but they've accepted that, hey, yeah, I'm going to go out tonight. Oh, yeah, I'll probably have a stomach ache afterwards. So I'll bring some antacids. Well, why don't you just not eat that food so you don't
Right.
have to have the antacid and, you know, and have this shit, you know, building up inside of you? We've
Right.
become so immune and numb to the notion of we eat and then there's a repercussion. It's not supposed to be that way. We're
Right.
supposed to eat and it's supposed to nourish us and make us feel good, right?
Right.
You go to
Right.
McDonald's, you have an egg McMuffin. I haven't had one in decades, but I guarantee people that eat one, they go to the bathroom in a half an hour and, you know, it makes them feel
Dude,
unwell.
I have a substitute for every nostalgic shit food I ate when I was a kid, right? So whether used to be the veggie dogs, or whether it's the now it's this type of organic cookie instead of, you know, this or that, you know, or if it's a Santa Cruz Coca-Cola instead of a, like, I will not eat Babylonian food, period. To the point of where if it's not some higher quality product, I won't eat. I won't eat for days if I didn't have, you know, eventually I would. But it's like you have to have high quality. I'm just in a luxury position to be conscious enough about it and have the money to buy this shit. It's all just, you know, whole paycheck, right? So but it's
So
just important
it's
to
amazing.
know that, yeah, man, this is so important. And that's what cannabis represents to me too. It represents that whole entire holistic spectrum of how we're going to, like, you know, people do just very like, oh, I just had fast food the other day. It was just once or twice. My dad eats that shit all the time. He's 82, healthy as shit. So you never know what people's constitutions are and what they can handle. But for
I've
me
built
personally, if I had McDonald's one time, I would throw up probably and be sick. I'm not a
I
vegetarian or anything like that.
I'm with you. Wholeheartedly, it would make me sick. You know, we have something in Canada called clamato juice, which is like just tomato clam juice
Yeah, we
that
get
we
it.
make Caesars with, right? And
Uh-huh.
and there's nothing that it's like a, you know, Bloody Mary, but it's Bloody Caesar. And there's nothing that I can tell you. There's no drink I would like more on at a brunch or anything than a beautiful. Like, I don't drink anymore because it kills me. But the Bloody Caesar specifically, there was so much MSG, and finally I just said,
Exactly.
why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
And I haven't had it in 20 years, whatever it is. Like, I haven't had clamato juice in 20 years because you know what becomes, you know what's an addiction more than any other for me in my life? Feeling good, Alex. That's an
Yeah.
addiction for me.
Yeah, I think for everybody it is, man. It takes so much discipline to eat properly and not have that quick fix, you know. And to this day, I still do it. I still like potato chips. I mean, they're organic potato chips, but so what? I shouldn't be eating all that sunflower oil, safflower oil, right? And I still to this day. But it's the same thing for exercise. Like, am I going to go do 100 push-ups after this thing? Yeah, I'm going to do it, but I've got to push myself and I've got to be strong. And the same things for food. But once you get into that pattern and once you start to feel good and get that chi going and get that connection with the great spirit going, or however you want to call it, you're just flowing, you're in your space, you're right where you should be, then that's addictive. And then that's really feeling good. So we can have the quick fix, or we can have the, okay, I'm going to go take just 10 breaths. I'm just going to go do these 10 breaths and concentrate just on 10 breaths. And after that 10 breaths, you say, God damn, 10 fucking breaths. And I feel so good. It's all connected, man. And I like what you said about when I started smoking weed and I did it with health in mind. I think that's a very interesting thing too, because everything we have to do has to be with health in mind. We can have our slips. We're humans. We're not perfect. But this is the spiritual awakening of the earth, is unless we're tied in with some type of You know, we've been poisoned with all, whether it's our water or our food or the information, or we're being controlled by all these industrial complexes. We always have been. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just to what degree you think it's happening and how you think it's playing out, right? And so I think it's happening to a, you know, as an, just on an empirical, logical side, we are being exterminated, you know, whether it's a conscious effort or not, I don't know. But when you see, go to a grocery store and you see what is considered to be food, you realize that something's gone awry in our society big time. And who suffers from this? The poor and disenfranchised. And they're sitting there and have no chance to go get anything in their food deserts. I mean, it's so easy for you to have one, to have money and be able to be like, oh, I got mine, I got mine. We have to be continually conscious of what's going on, of the pain and suffering around the world. And it doesn't mean we have to be depressing or ruin our day. We can still be optimistic and very happy. But we have, as a Taoist, you have to have some type of consciousness of what, of the whole picture, man, because that's what, that also, would you say, the middle path, Buddha says, right? So I'm not a food Nazi. I don't want anyone to do this or that. They can do whatever the fuck they want, right? But I'm not trying to mandate anything. It's a free world, right? But that middle path is so important for everything. And for healing, I think the middle path is. I think we live in such a manic culture. Oh yeah, fuck yeah, oh yeah, selfie, what, yeah. That the laws of the universe say, well, you're going to have those same lows too, you know. And so the real happiness is that ribbon in the middle where that nirvana of sorts resides.
Not too high, not too low, right? Like it's, you know, it's
like baby bear's porridge.
That's exactly right. The perfect temperature. I mean, that is exactly right. You know,
Oh, we're digressing, aren't we?
No, not at all, because I'll tell you, not at all. And I wasn't expecting, not that I wasn't expecting this to be so good, but I wasn't expecting it to go in this direction because
Right.
we are so aligned. Music saved me. Like music, I know that cannabis helped to heal me, but music saved me. And what I mean by saying that is I've struggled with mental health. It's really hard to have an autoimmune disease or any chronic illness and not struggle with mental health. And so, you know, combining that with watching a friend of mine die, and I have still, you know, dreams of the bloodstained docks at summer camp. You know, my grandfather having died a month before that, it was, you know, when I was 13 years old, and truly that impacted my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until I went to this school called the Jerome D. Diamond Adolescent Center here in Toronto, and it's a school of 30 kids, and I was the eldest at 16, and it was for kids that couldn't, you know, hack it in the mainstream school system, right? And so it's social, emotional, educational, you know, behavioral issues, whatever the case may be. And music saved my life. You know, I had started to play guitar at 13, and finally they said, like, instead of, you know, punching, it hurts a lot less for you to, instead of punching the wall, why don't you just go pick up that instrument right there and play the fucking guitar? And I remember that one of the first songs I learned, like to really cry to and sort of be in the moment with, was Wild Horses. Wild Horses.
The Rolling
And, you
Stones.
know, yeah. And so,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, like, for me, it's just music, you know, it's, Doobie said music is the doctor, right? Like music was the doctor for me.
The music that makes me cry is Bob Marley and Jamiroquai.
Dude, Jamiroquai is one of the all-time best ever. I mean, like one of the most distinct sounds and voices, right? That's what makes it so unique. His voice is insane.
Yeah, no, they're just so funky, and they were like retro at the time almost, right?
Yeah.
They were bringing this little retro 70s sound in,
Yeah.
and but they had their own thing also. But yeah, music has been very inspiring. I think I don't know if it saved me. It's always been a part of my life because I grew up in a musical family. But music is it's such a beautiful art that you can express anywhere at any time, and you know, I loved it. I found it challenging. People used to always say, wasn't it hard being a rapper who was white back in the, you know, the early 90s or whatever? And I said, now is the best, because as an artist, you want to stand out.
Exactly. You want to differentiate.
I was like, yeah, was I getting hate? That's why I switched to learn dance hall, because I'd be going up to big crowds that were all black, and I'd be rapping my face off, and it'd just be all stone face in the crowd, like, who's this white boy up there, right? And I was like, how can I win the crowd over? So I started chanting dance hall Jamaican style, right? And that became my secret weapon to get over. So I always had these little things in music that I would like. It was performing was always my favorite thing to do, and I performed all over, did all types of crazy shit. But how did it save you, man? Like, what do you mean? Like you
Well,
say, it
because
literally saved you.
yeah, it absolutely did. Like I thought about killing myself when I was very young. Having this disease, everyone thought, there was always this misconception. Even today, people look at me and they're like, you got it so easy, or, you're in this
No, but yeah,
publication and,
yeah,
and you're this. I'm like, come walk a mile, brother, come,
right,
come do
exactly.
what I do. And, it's not, I, I'm very specific in my social media to not curate something that says, hey, look at me, I'm happy. That's not what it's about. It's,
Right, right.
hey, look at me, I'm fucking real. You can relate to me because I'm having a really shit day. I struggle with mental health. And you know what, brother? More often than not, people resonate with that. They don't resonate with the fact that my sixth book is coming out in, where books are sold, in a couple weeks. Like, no one resonates with that. Who's written a multiple books? Who has this really successful, ICBC amazing of show that everybody wants to attend in Europe? Not many people can resonate with that type of success, but they can resonate with our struggles,
Right.
being arrested at the border in fucking, Burlington, Vermont, when I was going to, in college for a 0.3 of a gram. I don't even know if I've ever told that story on here, but the long and short of it was I didn't get into trouble because I'm an American citizen. They actually only gave my buddies who were Canadian citizens all the hassle in the world.
Uh-huh.
But they confiscated the car for 0.3 of a gram of hash.
Holy
And
shit.
yeah, dude, it was fucking brutal. But like, it's that sort of stuff where people just, you don't see, it's like the iceberg, right? They only see what's above the
No,
water,
that's
but
like
they don't
that's so
see.
funny, because when I do these shows, let's say, okay, I'm gonna go to Berlin. There's gonna be thousands of people there. I call it being king for a day,
Right.
because my life here, I'm just a family man with my wife and my daughter, and they're breaking my balls all day long, and I'm working, and I'm just, it's not glorious, right? There's some great. I love my job. I talk to people all over the world. It's great, but it's not glorious. So I always call it king for a day, and people are like, "Oh my God, Alex, blah blah blah," and I'm always like, well, if you want to work 15 hours a day for fucking 320 days out of the year, maybe you could be king for a day
Right.
also. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so it's just so good to stay humble and not get souped because
Nah.
once you do that, the Great Spirit does not fucking like that, you know?
I was on, I told a story. I posted a story today on LinkedIn, and I rarely, not rarely, that's not even fair now because I am using LinkedIn more and more. But last week I received an email. The long and short of it is this: I have a relationship with Sick Children's Hospital here in Toronto. Okay. And the reason I have a relationship is because in my high school career, I wrote every high school exam in the hospital, twice at Sick Children's Hospital. So I spent, almost 6 months of my life there as an inpatient.
Hmm.
And I always said, like, once I had the means to give back, and it wasn't through money, it was through raising funds and through my time, that I wanted sick kids to be the recipient of some of those efforts. And I started a relationship. I built a relationship with PACT, Pediatric Advanced Care Team, right? So it's kids that are not going to live a very long life and that are very sick. And one kid passed away, Corey Groves, on October 20th, October 31st, 2020. And then I was introduced to this young man, Paul, who I didn't, for whatever reason, I went to Spain, I was in Florida cooking, I was in Jamaica. Like, life got in the way. And I went to reach out to his mom last week, and he passed away. And it's that sort of give back. It's that sort of willingness to give. Like that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. I will tell you, and I put it out there to everyone. So basically, the point of me saying that was, and telling the story this morning was, seize the moment,
I know the
impact
point. I
people's
know what the
lives.
point. Man, just
You
be
know,
grateful and fucking thankful. And there's so much
yeah.
pain and suffering in the world that all this, we're gonna judge each other and be pissy and stand on pedestals. This is garbage. It's the most hateful, racist, misogynistic, xenophobic attitude
And it
that
just doesn't
anybody could ever
matter.
have.
It just doesn't matter. I lost a buddy. He killed
Yeah.
himself in 2021. He didn't take his artwork with him or any of his money or anything. Like you take the impact that you've had on other people with you. That's it. That's
such
it. The
such
positive
earthly
impact,
such earthly problems most people want to get all up in a dither about, and
right?
and then you just know there's so much. My mother passed away about 4 years ago, and since that happened, it was about, there's a, it's extremely difficult, but she was amazing and my best friend. But it actually made me a better person. All that pain and suffering, it makes you a better person if you are if your chakras are open to receiving and giving like that. Your light, it's moving, because all that pain and suffering should just make one have more patience, understanding and tolerance for other people. And this is the only direction we can go. All this knee-jerk fucking reductive rhetoric is dangerous, and it's only the person that's espousing it that's suffering, right? Like when I see some asshole out there in Babylon, I'm just like, oh man, you are like I'll pray for you, basically. Now if he's a dick to me, I might punch him in the face too, right? It could happen. I'll walk away, or I'll punch him in. I'll walk away, but if I have to, I'll punch him in the face. Because some people, you just get what you're coming. You just get you're a dick. You deserved it. But on a higher level, it's like, you got to have love and understanding. Some people need a little punch in the face every now and then, and just kind of a wake up call, whether it's figurative or literal. Uh, uh, the things that people are complaining and talking, and the greed, the avarice, the rapaciousness that's running our society right now. And just, if you're a pussy, if you're not a greedy, avaristic motherfucker, right? I don't know if avaristic's a word, but I like it. You're a pussy, right? And so if you're and you're swaffed, right? It's get or be got. Well, we're not animals, we're humans, and we get to make different choices. So the people in charge with all these wars, not just Putin, the West, all the fucking West wars also. It's a joke. We have children running we have complete, like 8-year-old, 10-year-olds would get on better than the adults in the world right now. So here's the culture and the narrative that's being foisted upon kids today, and whatever it is, and we're missing the point. We're people who are trying to be tolerant are the most intolerant people in the world these days, and shit is upside down. Of course, I have a lot of other opinions on that also, of why that is, but we won't get into that. But the bottom line is love, patience, tolerance, understanding. And if the time comes to get a punch in the face, then you did your part. You did your part until that point.
I hope that there is, I subscribe to karma. I believe that you make your own success, working hard, as you said. I've been speaking to someone. A lot of what I do is on a fractional basis these days. I don't really want to give anyone 100% of my time. And, when I explain to them, when
You're probably unemployable anyway, Jordan. You're too much your own person.
I'm definitely my brand, and I have my hands in a lot of pies. There's no question. But I'm a team player, and I love to learn, and I love to
Yeah.
lead. There's no question. I love to do those. Listen, I have to get back to the ICBC before we go on, because we're going to run out of time, and I need to know what's next for the ICBC, because this thing has, if you haven't been, I highly suggest that you go. There is nothing that I certainly know what Spanibus is doing is wonderful. It's just, it was very clear to me where the culture is, like how nascent it is.
Yeah.
There's, I was with a lot of women and at Spanibus and ICBC, but Spanibus specifically, and there was nothing. And because I'm in the health and wellness space too, I'm a little bit of a unicorn, and that it's mostly women in the space that I'm in and speaking to. There was nothing that spoke to our space at Spanibus. Zero, nothing, nada. And that was a missed opportunity, I thought.
Cannabis
But
is what it is. It's the longest running consumer event. It's always going to be what it is. It's always going to have its value and utility. However, the B2B thing in Europe is blowing up. We were the first B2B in Europe. We're the biggest in Europe. We're only in Europe now. So I've been in Canada. We ran the biggest B2B in Western Canada in Vancouver. We run the longest running in California. But I eschewed all those events so to focus only on Europe, because not only was that where our brand was blowing the fuck up, but it was where I wanted to live and I wanted to be, and it's where I actually enjoy doing business. To tell you the truth, I'm really bored when I do business in America and Canada right now. I don't know for what reasons it is, and I go to Europe, and all of a sudden I'm talking with all these different people and from different countries, and it's just a little bit more stimulating. I've been through a lot, and I do need my stimulation, right? And so I have to be honest with myself. So all my passion is in Europe. So what we're building in Europe right now, so we're not anywhere but Europe for the next 2 years. We've got, and I'll announce an event here that I haven't announced yet. We have Berlin. We'll be in Barcelona again, March 9th, the day before Spanibus again. Our big event is we have the ICBC Berlin coming up. That's the biggest B2B in Europe, the 19th and 20th of July. And we're expecting about 5,000 people. And we've got about 70,000 square foot of B2B expo space. So it's by far the largest B2B event in Europe. The day before that, we have the Global Investment Forum. I'm doing this investment forum series of these really high-end schwanky events. One in Berlin at the Hotel Adlon, and then September 9th in Zurich, Switzerland, at this little castle on the hill called the Dolder Grand. It's like the pimpest hotel in the country. It's stupid. And so we're doing these small high-end events also, but just for investment. And then the new one I'm doing the ICBC. This is what I haven't announced yet. We're doing the ICBC Mediterranean Retreat, September 22nd and 23rd, in a little town called Rovinj, Croatia, at the pimpest hotel in Europe. I'm like a bougie Rasta, right? So I love going to these, like, the fanciest, nicest places that don't have as much pretension to them. We did it at the W once. It was too pretentious. I hated it. So I love these nice places that aren't pretentious. I look for them. I search for them in my own spare time, right? Just because I want to go to these places anyway, right? So I found this place in Croatia, Jordan. Oh my God. It is insane, dude. It's the craziest shit ever. And I'm not just saying that to tout to like the event. It's going to be only 200 people. We're going to sell the event out, But I'm saying this shit is so crazy. It's right on the sea. It's Croatia. It's on this. It's like Rick Steves' favorite town, Rovine, and they just have this new hotel, the Park Hotel, like all these swimming pools, all these. It's like a 6-star hotel. It's the craziest thing. The food is all farm to table right at the hotel. It is absolutely stunning. Like, move over Greece, France, Italy, come to the Croatian Adriatic, and you'll be no more good, straight up. One of the reasons I get these fancy places is because of the stigma of cannabis too. I'm going into Croatia. It's very conservative there. And I figure if I rent the most expensive, most pimped out hotel in the nation, that it helps me. Just like I did for Switzerland with the Dolder Grand, the finest hotel in Zurich, right? Yeah, I like fine shit, right? Whatever. But there's a method to the madness. We'll go in, and then we bring in people like politicians from Croatia that they wouldn't be coming to do it if you were at the Motel 6 or whatever, right? But you're at the baddest hotel in the nation, and then they're coming in representing. So you heard it here first. The ICBC Mediterranean Retreat, Rovinj, Croatia, 22nd and 23rd.
Amazing. And you talk about a couple things have resonated with me. Empathy goes a very long way in life, but the fact is that for us, what we're doing, having these conversations, having these conferences and renting higher end establishments and associating, higher end brands and higher end culture with with cannabis. I mean, obviously the parallel is that's what I do for a living. And ultimately it's about destigmatizing the plant. And when people see someone like us, that whether curating these experiences, eating my food and recognizing that, holy shit, that brownie has cannabis and it has avocado and it has coconut oil and almond flour and cacao in it. And it's really good for me and it's really fucking tasty. And like I can eat like this, it's all about destigmatization. And I'll sort of,
Yeah.
for me, the biggest opportunity, and I keep talking about this, the biggest opportunity in cannabis, Alex, is especially from a CPG standpoint, but are the people that don't currently consume cannabis. That's the biggest opportunity. How do we bring them? Because they're all kind of curious. Many people are really, really curious about cannabis. You know what
Yeah.
they're not going to do? They're not going to grab the Ziggies. They're not going to grab the raws, and we're not going to give them flour and say, go roll a joint or
Right.
anything combustible. We're going to do
Right.
it through food and beverage.
The cool thing is so I'm in Oregon, right? Southern Oregon, basically the one of the weed capitals of the world, right? So there's nothing for me to teach anybody here anymore. I actually helped revolutionize medical marijuana here in the valley. I helped this valley tremendously. Became a strong community member and proud of my work. But now there's nothing. There's no more. But when I'm in fucking Croatia, where they're all like
Yeah,
strict Catholics and shit, and maybe associated with some type of form of
absolutely.
religious temperance. And here I am talking to them. I pride myself on engaging them and being very clear and articulate. And just like you say, you smoke weed every day I smoke weed every day since I was 12, right? Every day I'm a summa cum laude graduate of political science. I'll put myself, and I don't say that to tout myself, but I say that to make this point that I'm a full fucking stoner, like of the utmost. Actually, I'm Eurotrash now since I lived in Europe, so I just smoke with tobacco and hash, right? So it is a more functional way to smoke. It's not like I'm doing big dab hits or anything, but it doesn't matter because Europeans only smoke one way, and that's with tobacco. So I tell them all I smoke every day, and so many of them are like, yeah, really? You, Alex? You seem so clear and on top of it or whatever. And I'm like, don't believe the hype. And that's
Yeah.
that's that I love pushing that message to people and be like, surprise, surprise, motherfucker. I'm a freak, right? But guess what? I'm the most professional on top of it freak you ever
High
met.
functioning pothead. That's how I refer to myself. I can conduct a podcast, before I come on the podcast, I've,
No problem. I
smoked a
smoked a
bowl.
joint
And
before we came on.
of course, I mean, since I woke up and before I worked out, I mean, it's part of what
Exactly.
I do. It's
Right.
part of my namaste. I do a headstand and I'm high and I can zone out and I can be on my spin bike and really get into a zone. Listen, it's
Exactly,
cannabis for
brother.
me it's just part of my life. It's how I treat myself. It's my medicine, and it's how I stay focused and become and maintain or really, once I found my mental health through my physical health, I
Right.
became a much better father and husband.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, so important.
Way better for me. And so, cannabis, when I started to realize that, it wasn't because I was only, a deadhead, or, it was because I needed
Right.
it to survive. And it took me
Right.
decades to realize
Right.
that.
Well, like you said, Jack Herring never smoked weed till he was 30. Uh, uh,
Right.
so a lot of people don't know that, but like you said, there's an application for everybody. Like, or there's all these curious
Exactly.
people, and there's an application for everyone. Now, some people just don't want to smoke and get high on THC, smoke a joint and get high. Some people just don't like the feeling, and that's fine. But there's still an application for them to use cannabis, whether it's a
Absolutely.
certain micro edible or whether it's a lotion or topical or whatever the fuck it is. And there might be a certain time where they might have a certain ailment where then they only use it then. Like my wife doesn't smoke at all ever, but when she gets sciatica pain, she takes a puff off that vape maybe once or twice a year only. And she said it helps her go to sleep and it helps her. And she's total not pothead. Like
Or you could
she's
put
total
terpenes
Sandra
in,
D.
or you put terpenes into a diffuser. I mean, something as simple as
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
something as simple as that. So that misconception that cannabis equals getting high, right?
So in Europe, see how exciting it is for me, because it's still so stigmatized. You're thought of like,
Of
you
course.
can't. It's like you're thought of like some lazy loser still, and they'll think that's really a big threat, even in Germany or whatever. And that's just starting to crack. And I love help being that I can say I'm a little part of crushing
I,
that glass ceiling.
I'd go on for hours with you, dude. I wasn't expecting for us to have this, amazing camaraderie. So this has been incredible. We have to do it again.
Yeah,
I want to
brother.
know. So if people want to be a part of ICBC, go to ICBC, present at ICBC, how do they get in touch? What do they do?
Yeah, if they're interested in coming to Europe and having the most phenomenal experience of all time on a B2B cannabis level, just visit the website, internationalcbc.com. If anybody wants to hit me up directly, I'm super accessible. Alex at internationalcbc.com. You can just hit me up, and yeah, whatever's clever. We love it. We welcome all the good vibrations.
One of these days we will we'll get some food and beverage content into some of these shows. I think that would be amazing.
Bro,
And
I'm down, bro. Like I've already helped some people do a lot of stuff with their food and beverage over there. So I mean, I love, and that's the first thing when this one guy wanted to pop through and rock his shit, and he wanted to put a CB drink. I said I got to see the ingredients, because if you got some Babylonian ingredients there, I'm not. And he didn't actually. It actually was natural enough for me to be like, oh shit, okay, fine. I thought I was going to deny him for sure, right? But it didn't have refined sugar, and it didn't have all this other crazy
good,
weird shit in it. And I was just like,
great.
but it was like the one that didn't, right? So that's why I'm down for you, because I know your shit is. I'm sure you're producing the
I'd love to
ITAL,
cook for you
ITAL.
sometime. We got to get
Oh
you.
man,
We got to get you to Toronto. I'd love to. You got a seat at my table anytime, dude.
I appreciate that. I don't know if I can go to the fascist state of Canada though right now,
Fair enough.
but I love Canada. You have the most beautiful country in the world. I grew up in the Canada of America, so and I can even talk like a Canadian, because Minnesotans and Canadians I talk a little bit like, it's like this
Yeah, we do.
Norwegian Native American influence. I love it, man.
Love it, dude.
Roots.
You're an absolute pleasure. I am sure the audience love and I want you to know the ICBC has had now 2 full podcasts worth of content on my platform, because that's how much I loved it. It's how much you impacted me and my other colleagues. And quite frankly, I've already monetized as a result of being at the show. And
Fuck
and I
yeah, I
thank
love
you
it.
for that. I
I
thank you
love
for
it.
that.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
and I every time. Jedi and I.
100%, dude. We're gonna do this again, and I can't wait to spend some time with you in person. To all the listeners out there, I have to give some love very quickly. I've been negligent, and I apologize. The Joy of Cannabis: 75 Ways to Amplify Your Life Through the Science and Magic of Cannabis. Melanie Abrams and Larry Smith. I contributed to this book this year. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The Art of Cooking with Cannabis, CBD, and THC infused recipes from across America. Tracy Medeiros had an amazing collection of culinarians contribute to this book. Me representing Canada, and I was actually nominated for People's Choice Award. So congratulations, Tracy. It's been a big week for me in that I got a big spread at Kind Magazine. My brothers and, Shabazz and Josh, and look at that fucking fried chicken. That one just looks bomb. But thank you so much for the opportunity to Kind Magazine. And for the first time, High Times featured one of my recipes, which is really cool in their 420 edition or 420 issue. And what's really exciting about it for me is I've spent the last 7 years really sort of building this narrative of what cannabis food and beverage can be. And to see my signature dish, where I used to create signature dishes that were 15, 20 different items into a dish. And now this one signature dish, chicken kale meatballs with infused cherry tomato sauce, has all of 4 ingredients in it. And it just goes to show you buy the best ingredients you can, you do very little to them, and you serve them to those that you love. That is great food. So High Times, thank you so much for your support. Thank you everyone for listening. And as I say always, If you are struggling with mental health, my DMs are always open. People contact me all the time. I am one hell of a listener. You can do one thing in this life, my friends. One thing. We can positively impact people by being a good person. Be a good human. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great day.